Yidhari is one of those characters that on the surface is undeniably quite skippable. She shares an element with Miyavi and doesn't have all that many fights where she's the best pick for. None of this detracts from how strong a character she is though, and if you factor in vertical investments, her performance skyrockets, having one of the strongest damage dealer M1s in the game and gaining access to brand new combos and routes with it. And if her mindscapes are pushed to the limit, then even without relying on dial-in, she can easily manage sub 1 minute kills of Wandering Hunter. The path lost beneath the abyss is Yidhari's M1, and it's absolutely loaded. It gives a solid boost to her damage by providing a 20% ice res ignore on her basic attacks and EX specials, which by itself is a ridiculously high increase. For context, Astra's M1, touted as one of the best M1s in the game to go for, provides 18% res shred. The same is true for Lucia's M1, another busted mindscape, in large part due to this. So getting 20%, even more than either of these support mindscapes, on the majority of Yidhari's burst, that's pretty darn good. It doesn't apply to chain attacks or ultimates, so it isn't all-encompassing, but given how the majority of her damage distribution comes from basic attacks and EX specials, it's a decently strong increase as is. Doubly so because the proportion of damage that Yidhari gets from EX specials skyrockets with this mindscape, as the real value from it comes from how it changes the way enhanced EX specials work. First, it lowers the cost of all EX specials by 10 adrenaline, so it costs 50 instead of 60, and by itself that's a massive gain. Especially as if using the enhanced variant at a stun, Yidhari still refunds 15 adrenaline. At M0, Yidhari can really struggle to build up enough resources and time for stuns, demanding a lot of field time to do so. In many of my runs at least, I'd frequently go in being too short to properly link into a second enhanced EX special after ultimate. After Dalin's release, and this is even more of an issue, as on certain fights, she does demand a bit of field presence, which can take time away from Yidhari's resource generation. So having a lower cost on EX specials goes a long way at making routes less demanding, and at times allowing for more EX casts over the course of a fight. The second and far more interesting part is note how after using an EX special, the energy requirement seems to reduce up until Yidhari fully recovers from her skill animation. This is because Yidhari can now link multiple enhanced EX specials together at a discounted cost. The way it works is, after landing with an EX special, keeping the basic or special attack button held down will consume 35 adrenaline to immediately cast it again. No regular special needed. Doing so will delay the healing from the first and backload it instead, healing for 66% of her missing HP at once after the second cast. Since it's only linked to by holding down the button, if you let go, then press again, you can still get a shortcut to charge smash. The game won't force you into double enhanced EX specials. You can technically go into it out of the regular EX special, but why do that when you can link 2 enhanced ones back to back? This extension can only be done once, and you can see the energy cost return to normal after one extension is used. So no endless pogo stick jumping, but that's more than enough. And although the first enhanced EX special does still benefit in full from the 15 adrenaline refund when out of stun, this does not apply to the second cast. No 20 adrenaline cost enhanced EX specials to be had. Still, as the second cast needs only 35 adrenaline, when coupled with a 10 adrenaline reduction on the first enhanced EX special, that means 2 enhanced EX specials now cost only 85 adrenaline. With the healing also being backloaded, there's no need to worry about losing on Yidhari and her Vengeance passive bonuses, as she will remain under 50% HP for the whole double cast duration. So with a bit of planning, it opens up the ability to do some brand new and disgustingly hard-hitting combos. To fit the whole combo in, we do need to give up a chain attack, but considering that Yidhari's enhanced EX special has a 1000% higher damage multiplier and benefits from the Ice Red Shred, it's more than a worthwhile trade-off. Unless, of course, Dial-In is present, in which case the 2-second stun duration extension coupled with Yidhari's fast ultimate gives just enough time to fit everything in. On paper, this shouldn't work. The first enhanced EX special costs 50 adrenaline to cast. Using the extension is another 35, and since the goal is to fit 3 of them, this effectively means a 135 adrenaline cost. Considering Yidhari can only have 120 adrenaline in total, that's less than what the combo needs. Thankfully, the 2 adrenaline per second passive generation she has means that by stalling with her chain attack and ultimate, she's left with just enough in resources to get the full combo out. So a lot more damage potential, be it in or out of stun, and a lot more decibels from the additional healing that comes with these extra enhanced EX special casts. At the same time, it does also make rotations pretty darn strict, as if you aren't going into a stun maxed out on adrenaline, you're going to struggle getting full benefit from this extra cast. So one more layer of optimization to Yidhari's game plan. Who Lingers here, lost in thought, is Yidhari's M2, and much like her M1, it is incredibly strong. It's surprisingly straightforward, providing a blanket 40% crit damage stat boost and an additional 0.5 adrenaline per second for 30 seconds after either Yidhari's parry or stun variant special activation. Having 40% crit damage is nice to know, but the bulk of the power behind this Mindscape is on the adrenaline generation. I should point out that for some reason this doesn't show up as a buff effect, nor does it show up as an increase on Yidhari's stat sheet. But that doesn't mean that the buff is bugged or not active, as by timing how long it takes for Yidhari's adrenaline to fill while in combat, it's clear to see the difference it makes. When stun begins, well, you're activating it with every enhanced EX special anyways, so that's full stun uptime. And if you're afraid that it will drop on out of stun, know that it only needs the special to hit, not any of its follow-ups. So you could, even at over 50 adrenaline, just get a roll counter on an enemy and wait a bit until the enhanced EX special window has expired, so as to not spend adrenaline when you don't want to, but still get the regen buff. Not like you need to anyways, as all of this adrenaline regen comes on top of M1's reduced enhanced EX special cost. Even after using them, it's easy enough to make up for the measly 35 adrenaline that gets used up in time for stuns. Honestly, with it lasting 30 seconds and being effectively refreshed with every stun, it really doesn't need all that many changes to your gameplay to have 100% uptime off this in a fight. And we've just gone over how strict her adrenaline requirements are for stuns with M1. M2 fixes that problem. A 25% increase in Yidhari's passive adrenaline generation is a big deal, allowing for quite a bit more leeway. You can go into the stun state without being maxed out on adrenaline and still have enough back to do a double enhanced EX special. Where previous M0 rotations struggle to make the 120 adrenaline for a stun, M2 does that so easily it can even afford to use out of stun EX specials and still have more than enough resources back in time for the combo. Actually, scratch that. It's so much adrenaline that you can fit in 2 whole out of stun enhanced DX specials at times and still be entirely capped out on adrenaline for stun. Getting what's almost as much crit damage as a slot 4 drive disc is nice, but it's the quality of life and routing optimizations that the adrenaline bonuses from this Mindscape brings that makes it so strong. Blooming in silence is Yidhari's M4, and first impressions might have you think it's ridiculously busted. An extra 5% in combat HP when under Ether via Wellspring, and 10% more decibels from HP loss? That's both a stat boost and a near unquantifiable value offering with more decibel generation, which consistently proves to be broken for every character that gets something of the sort. The extra combat HP is great, more HP means more sheer force, and given how few M4s are straight up damage boosts, it's a welcome gain. What's outstanding about this Mindscape though are the decibels. In the previous video covering Lucia's Mindscapes, I've gone over just how obscenely good decibel generation can be. It allows for better routing in fights, and at times, unlocks brand new combos that far outdamage their standard counterparts. So 10% more decibels from Yidhari's primary method of generating said decibels seems amazing. Do note that it is a boost strictly to decibels from HP loss. All of Yidhari's attacks, as well as generic decibel generating bonuses like assists or attribute anomalies, are not affected. This is still significant though, as you can probably expect at least 2/3 of Yidhari's total decibel generation to come from HP consumption, if not more. That's at least 200 decibels on every ultimate cycle. Given how it's impossible to get double ultimate combos without Fufu or Dylan, and for Fufu it's pretty hard as it is, you'd think that this makes it easier, right? Just think of the potential all these extra decibels bring. Then you try it in practice and it can actively harm Yidhari's performance in fights. How, you might ask? In case you haven't watched my Yidhari teams and Deadly Assault rotation guide, I highlight how tricky it can be to play her with Fufu. The extra decibel she generates offsets ultimate timings, leading to situations where Yidhari's ultimate drops before or mid-stun, as it was stocked too early. Now, instead of this being a Fufu exclusive problem, it's an everyone exclusive problem. Playing Yidhari against Wandering Hunter at M4 and above, be it with or without Fufu, led to frequent ultimate drops. And unfortunately, Yidhari just won't have the personal decibel generation to build up to another ultimate in time. When I'd find myself in a position where ultimate was stocked before Wandering Hunter's Miasma Shield, it was run over. Admittedly, this isn't as bad an issue as I'm making it sound. If you're correctly executing the M1 combo, this does mean giving up on a Yidhari chain attack, and this is often enough to leave you a few decibels short, lining things up just right. And if you do notice that you're going to hit 3000 decibels just before, you can just not stock the ultimate. Avoid using charge smashes and play it safe. Better to lose out on 1 or 2 of them out of stun than lose out on an entire ultimate in stun. I would urge you to always play it safe though. Maybe you think you're in the clear, a good 200 plus decibels away from 3000, but if you get an attribute anomaly or go into a defensive assist and assist follow-up, then that buffer can end up being a lot smaller than you think. Not to mention that ultimate alignment issues are fight specific. This isn't really a problem in Shield defense and even other Deadly Assault bosses like Marinette. She has a fair amount of downtime with her clone phases, but it still ends up fine. If you happen to have Dylan, then M4 in that fight is a blessing. As it turns out, on my runs of Yidhari, Dylan, and Lucia, which you can check out my Dylan teams and Deadly Assault rotation guide for, the speed in which Dylan stuns means that Yidhari can sometimes struggle to keep up in decibel generation. I'd be having ultimates built up just as stuns ended, which then caused them to fall off before I could reach the next. This was even more egregious when I didn't have Dylan's signature Wenjin, as it necessitated spending a bit more time on her to keep up with energy requirements. That's fewer Yidhari charge smash into basic 3 loops and fewer decibels as a result. On runs I did with M4, however, the extra decibels aligned just right, making sure that I had ultimates ready for every stun. Not like I even needed it for a 4th, as Marinette was dying long before that. So despite it having some situational problems, it is objectively a strong Mindscape. Sometimes it needs you to work around it for rotations, and sometimes it allows you to not care about decibels or need to make character-specific adjustments. It's nowhere near as good as Yidhari's M1 or M2, but as far as M4s go, I'd say it's rather decent. At last, a peaceful dream is Yidhari's M6, and like M4, it appears to be incredibly strong at first glance. After Yidhari spends decibels to activate or extend Ether via Wellspring, she gains 25% sheer damage bonus for 30 seconds. This is huge. There are very few ways of gaining sheer damage bonus in the game. 10% from 4-piece Yunqui Tails, and some from limited Wenjins, like 18% from Kraken's Cradle or 20% from Xingling Birdcage, but other than that, it's only through character mindscapes that this can be built. Namely Lucia's M2, which provides 15%, and, well, Yidhari's and Ishuan's M6s, the latter of which gives only 20% and for 15 seconds after using an ultimate. So 25% for 30 seconds, and having this be applied on activating or extending Ether Veil, rather than having to use an ultimate first to get it, which would mess up combos, ticks all the right boxes. Then you look a little closer and it seems kind of awkward. Ishuan's sheer damage bonus is lower, yes, but only by 5%. It also lasts only 15 seconds after using an ultimate, which is a problem, but then you remember her kit and other mindscapes. M1 gives her a round start talisman ultimate, which applies the buff. So for shield defense speedruns, you can have the buff ready straight away. Yidhari though has to build up to it. You might spend 15, 20, maybe even 25 seconds building up decibels depending on the fight and enemy attack patterns. So if you like speedrunning shield defense, then Yidhari's M6 will fall short of expectations. For Deadly Assault, it does better, but Yidhari's shield fight is Wandering Hunter, and the stage mechanic gives up to 35% sheer damage bonus, diluting things quite a bit. And since this is tied to decibel spend, you'd need to go through Yidhari's M4 to get here, so the same problems apply. Since M4 means Yidhari is likely to stock ultimates before Wandering Hunter goes into his phase transition, that means the M6 buff is going to be running out just as stun begins. You know, the moment where you'd most want the buff to be active. The same fixes for M4 also apply here, but with M6 you need to be cycling through 3000 decibels in 30-second intervals to maintain the buff. Even if you manage to make it to stuns with ultimate ready and use it, it may be at the latter end of the 30-second buff duration. Remember, it's not using an ultimate that activates the M6 buff, it's stocking one. Which means that even if the ultimate lands in stun, all of that sheer damage percent bonus may not actually last long enough to cover the rest of a combo. It isn't all that hard to make the necessary adjustments though. While it is true that the buff won't have 100% uptime, it's no big deal to work around decibel generation in such a way that it always lines up. Doing or avoiding basic 3s or add-a-stun enhanced X specials to control how many decibels come from Yidhari's health drain, finely tuning the number of defensive assists you go for, or even just finding the right balance of anomaly buildup with bang boos. Once you've got a route down, hitting the magic number 3000 just as stun begins can soon become the norm. Not just in ways you can delay it, but also accelerate it, as in some fights, even with M4, Yidhari can struggle in having decibels up before stun begins. Doing whatever you can to line it up for critical burst periods is part of the optimization game that makes working with M6 engaging. And if I'm going to be honest, people going for Yidhari's M6 are more likely than most to have gone for other character mindscapes. Lucia's M1 and M4 offer so many decibels that you can sometimes be building 3000 decibels every 30 seconds. Check in Fufu and doing so is effectively guaranteed, meaning 100% buff uptime and constant ultimate use. At that point, the raw damage Yidhari gets at M6 in her vertically invested teams means that the question isn't if she can kill in 2 stuns, it's how early in the stun do bosses die. So ignoring phase transitions, decibel management, and any complicated stuff ends up leaving you better off. Rush to a stun as fast as you can to kill enemies then and there. It can even lead to situations where it's better to return to M0 combos. In the M6 run I showcased at the start, I got better results with the enhanced X special being used for daze build rather than damage. M6 does offer another bonus. Once per buff application, Yidhari will not die when taking fatal damage and restores 25% of her HP over 5 seconds if it happens. I do mean it when I say per buff application. Without having 3000 decibels built and stocked to activate the M6 buff, she will just die. If you happen to die multiple times in an encounter, that's fine too. Even after triggering the safeguard once, so long as you can build up to the buff and stock decibels again, that will give another fresh stack of Death Defiance. Just keep in mind that it is once per buff. If Yidhari is taken to 0 HP before it can be reapplied, she will just die. This might have some very niche use on the obscenely high floors of tower, or maximum ether activity runs of Lost Void, but otherwise Yidhari has so much damage reduction and invulnerability that no deadly assault or shield defense enemy is killing her. It's a nice little insurance for some endgame modes, but it really isn't doing all that much. All in all, compared to many other damage dealer M6s like Ellens, Yuans, Janes, Yanagis, Evelyns, Alice's, the list goes on, then Yidhari at maximum investment can be quite strong. In summary, Yidhari's mindscapes are varied. Her M1 and M2 are very strong, with new combos, raw damage increases, and quality of life improvements that can open up brand new routes. M4 and M6 are also pretty strong, and can also open up brand new routes, but in a different way. Failing to adapt to M4 can throw off runs, and the conditional nature of M6 means it needs to be worked around for its value to truly come through. Investing deeply into Yidhari may need active management, but for those who can do so properly, it is certainly very rewarding. I do need to be open about the fact that while her mindscapes are good, especially her M1 and M2, it's still no Ishuan. In fact, an M6 Ishuan is able to kill Wandering Hunter faster than an M6 Yidhari, despite the lack of element weakness match and even lower team investment levels. With an ever-growing cast of agents and encounters that synergize well with Yidhari, the value of her mindscape seems to be increasing with every patch. I've already covered some of the ways Dylan changes Yidhari's combos and playstyle here, but that's just the start. I'll soon go through Dylan's mindscapes, and there may just be some unique ways in which Yidhari interacts with them, so do keep an eye out for that. The best way to do so is to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay in the loop for when it drops. I've got more videos coming. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.